Hi everyone, welcome to Medianet's webinar on the rise of public relations in this LLM and prompt era. I'm Amrita, Sidhu, the Managing Director of Medianet, and we have an action-packed session lined up for you. We've had over 170 people register for this event, so it's really great to see the interest from you all on how AI is reshaping the role of PR and what that means for us in the communication, media, and corporate affairs space. So thank you very much to everyone who is watching this live or watching the recording, because I'm sure a lot of you will be doing that too, like I tend to do with some of these events. I am privileged to be joined by two very experienced guests for this discussion, and I am going to introduce you to them right now. First up, Celia Harding, who is the founder of LEOPRD, the world's first language engine optimization, that's Leo, PR advisory, which builds findability, fame, and authority in this age of AI. Celia has over 2 decades of PR experience working across a range of organizations like big global giants, Google, Diageo, MasterCard, but as well as working with underground festivals and upstart founders. Welcome, Celia.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Next up is Mercedes Carrin, who is the head of marketing here at Medianet. And in that role, she oversees all of our marketing, communications, and PR work across a whole range of media intelligence services. She has, over 15 plus years experience in this space, but she is most importantly for today's discussion, a really great example of how a comms professional can be an organizational leader when it comes to AI knowledge, experimentation, and learnings, because that is what she's been doing for Medianet and the Mediality Group for the better part of the last year. Welcome, Mercedes.
Thank you. Looking forward to the chat.
Thank you, and thanks both for being here. With us today. Now, for those watching live or on demand, this is a topic that is very close to our heart here at Medianet, because PR has been in Medianet's DNA for 40 years now. And for that whole time, we have been providing services to the PR and comm space for Australian-based organizations. And now we're at this moment of PR rising, a moment of media rising, and could it be the moment, if we capitalize on it correctly, that PR reasserts its relevance and regains dominance that it, maybe didn't really lose, but regains its visible dominance in delivering communication reliability and communication results. It's also a topic very close to Medianet's heart, because of our own AI journey and the media intelligence and monitoring services we launched last year that leverage some incredible custom AI and large language models. So over the course of this discussion, what I want you to walk away with is some knowledge on the new rules to earn attention of LLMs and where AI fits when it comes to earning visibility, and how we as PR, comms, media professionals can adapt to this new reality. Now, if you have any questions for either of our speakers, please put them into the questions chat, the questions panel that you would see there on your screen, and we will do our best to get to them over the course of this discussion. But let's dive straight in. Celia, starting with you, why did you launch LEOPRD, the first, like I said at the start, the world's first language engine optimization business? And what is language engine optimization?
So imagine a brand is mentioned in a single AI generated response and instantly trusted by millions, or it's effectively erased from the conversation. That's the era that we're facing now, where for years people have been really reliant on Google for information and this age of abundance. And now what we're seeing is that information is now being condensed into these small responses, a curated response. And if you're not in that response as a brand, you've got a problem. And so I created LEOPRD because my own Google usage was declining. And I could see that this was going to be a really impactful and important space for brands to play. and make sure that they were visible in those responses. So LEOPRD means LEOPRD, which is language engine optimization PR'd. And language engine optimization is exactly what I've said previously. It's about being visible in those responses and optimizing for that visibility.
Awesome. And I'm sure you are going to give us some tips over the course of this conversation about optimizing. Now, depending on what research you look at, right, Celia and Mercedes, depending on what research you look at, earned media, corporate newsrooms, press releases, they represent anywhere from 60%, according to something like the numbers, or 90, closer to 90% if you look at recent and Golan data of citations in large language models. Because my understanding is these sources are perceived as credible. So share with us, please, from your knowledge and research, how are LLMs actually prioritizing what they cite and what information gets surfaced in those responses?
So these machines, they prioritize more what other people say than what you say this yourself. And us being in the business of PR for so long, we've known that for years. And so it's really capitalizing on that external trust signals. And these large language models, they are in the business of signals, and they're looking for that authority, they're looking for the trust. And so as guardians of that and managing reputation for businesses and brands, that is our job to do that in this space. And I carried out research which proved that, and it's like the editorial is one of the biggest drivers of large language model visibility, reviews, awards. So again, it paints this picture of that trust space.
Yeah, fantastic. I really love that sentiment around trust, editorial, the role of media, right? And that's why I say again about, PR rising back up into this space. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are watching, listening, that have over the last decade, like us at Medianet, spent and invested an inordinate amount into SEO. And that whole concept. And now we're being told about LEO and GEO and, that case of investment there as well. What do you say to that? And Mercedes, I'd like your perspective on this as well after Celia. What do you say to that? And should we be stopping the SEO piece? Should we continue? Should we be doing that and GEO now? What would be your advice to those listening?
So look, I think SEO as an industry has similar problems to the PR industry. Like, we as an industry are terrible at managing our own reputation. And I think a lot of that is down to measurement. I think the sort of guarantee of results and managing expectations, it's not paid for, guaranteed. And so I think that now with Leo, there's a bit more opportunity for us to show real tangible business results and how everything is aligned to those outcomes. Now more than ever, it's not enough to just go, oh, here's some KPIs of, a few broadcast pieces and here's some clippings. That just doesn't cut it. And part of the issue that we've had is that, we're reporting into the C-suite, and they, in this climate where budgets are being cut, you need to be more accountable than ever. And SEO is a long play, and I think SEO has also had some reputational problems because of the way in which there's been some shady operations and trying to score backlinks on sites that are never going to see the light of day because they're being scraped by Google. But I think a lot of the sort of principles of SEO still stand. So whether you're trying to get some coverage on a high domain authority site, the same high domain authority sites for SEO are the same really for these large language models. So in that sense, some of it is still relevant, and some of the technical SEO I think is still relevant. But rather than optimizing for backlinks, it's really mentions and more about presence than page rankings.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great tip. Mercedes, what's your take on this topic, and I guess this blurring of the lines between SEO and gen engine optimization?
Yeah, so yeah, I don't think SEO is dead. Definitely, I feel like we need to now do both in a way, and there's a lot of overlap between what you need to do for SEO as what you need to do for visibility on LLMs, especially around the structure of an article or a press release. Those semantically rich headings, you might wonder what is semantically rich. So very descriptive language, very not punny, not creative, just say it like it is, very descriptive, full of meaning. And yeah, I think we just need to get used to the fact that our content doesn't have to deliver clicks all the time. It needs to deliver value, it needs to deliver brand awareness, and it needs to deliver at the end of the day business outcomes. So we need to get comfortable with that, and that's a concept that maybe with SEO, SEO is all about driving the clicks, and optimizing for LLMs is about driving citations and credibility and trust. So it's a brand play, and it's what PR is really strong at, right? So yeah, I feel like that we really need to start getting used to that. We've seen at Medianet, and I've seen it across the board, this crocodile effect, where your impressions are going up, but your clicks are not going up like you would normally see on your traffic. Yeah. So it starts to open up like the crocodile mile. So your clicks are going down and your impressions are going up. And we just need to get comfortable with that, because those AI summaries, for example, on Google are driving impressions, but they're not driving clicks necessarily. And it needs to be okay. Be okay with that.
So again, just staying with you, Mercedes, talk us through practically what are some of the changes you've started to implement in your team, knowing exactly that point there, right, about how AI and how different types of visibility is impacting consumer behaviour, and the new way perception can be driven. What are some of the tips that you're doing?
Well, the first thing we've done is just give ourselves permission to experiment. And, we got a paid ChatGPT account, for example. We use Gemini. I let the team run experiments all the time. We share what we learn. We share the wins and the fails. So that was like the first thing that we have done. But we also have someone that is dedicated to optimizing content, optimizing for SEO, but also now thinking, how do we optimize this for LLMs as well, and keeping an eye on how we're doing in that regard. So yeah, I would say that's the first thing we have done, is just try to learn. We can't be afraid of it. We need to be curious about it.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Celia, coming back to you, in LEOPRD's reputation to revenue report, which there will be a QR code at the end of this discussion for everyone to download. I mean, such a rich, meaty piece of research. What findings surprised you the most about how AI is influencing trust in brands? Coming back to that trust word that you were using earlier.
Well, obviously it's on such a growth trajectory. If you look at even when I did the report, which was back in, we did the data in March and published it in April versus now, the usage of ChatGPT, they're processing over 2.5 billion prompts a day. And that is just absolutely ginormous. And so that's only one of the large language models. And each of them have quite different personalities in terms of what they're using as not only their training data, but then where they're looking for that recency content. So the way these machines work is they are trained on a set of data which comes from all different sources. But then if they can't, and that only goes up to a certain date, but then if they need more recent information, then they scour the web and look to fill those gaps with that information that they can find. And where they default to in terms of those websites are all quite different. And so ChatGPT, for example, has a really big focus on editorial awards and thought leadership. And that's why we can see some of the partnerships that they've struck up. For example, News Corp has a partnership with ChatGPT. You've got Perplexity, which is also very editorial focused, but has a strong focus on recency as well, versus Copilot, which is more structured data, and that will actually look at a lot of the information on your corporate website, for example, before going out to some other avenues. And then Gemini will look at more kind of evidence-based data and reports. So yeah, all very different. And if you want to appear on all of them, then you need to optimize for each accordingly.
Yeah, and just to pick on one of the things that you said there, Celia, you talked about one of the larger media organizations that has a deal, an arrangement now with one of these large language models. What can you share about any other kind of media organizations you know that have deals? Is there anything else you think the audience should be aware of there?
Yeah, there's quite a few. There's The Guardian, the LA Times, Reuters. I mean, Reddit has obviously a big partnership. So there's a lot, and there's more being added on a daily basis. And there's a lot of conversation, and hopefully some of you are following this because it does impact you, around like what these partnerships look like, who's open to sharing their data with these platforms, and whether that should shape some of your pitching and your strategy for when you're working on that media outreach. But the research that we did, it showed that even though publications like the Australian Financial Review don't technically have a partnership with a pub that they've announced, that these machines are still crawling their content. And so getting featured on a site like that is still really important. It also, I think I mentioned this at the start, I don't know if I'm having so many conversations, but yeah, it's not scraping ads. So if you're talking to your marketing team and, a lot of the investment is going on meta ads, that money is going to start flooding into PR when people realize that these ads aren't contributing to that. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Things will change, but it's our job to stay across that. And the more you play with these and the more you experiment and allow your team, to play with it, just like Mercedes was saying, the more that you will uncover and the more that you can explore and the more that should shape your strategy around what you're doing. And it will keep evolving. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick on a audience question because it relates to something I wanted to ask anyway, and I think it's quite timely now. Both of you have talked about experimentation. That's great, but we are communications professionals. We are all about measurement. We are all about showing ROI and value, right? So what are some of the tools that you're aware of or that you might be using yourself, you'd encourage others listening to use to measure that coverage, that exposure piece, and whether any of this experimentation is actually increasing visibility and LLMs and, in the Gen AI kind of technology. Celia, do you want to go first? Mercedes will come to you after.
Yeah, so there's literally new tools coming out by the day. And again, this comes down to playing and experimenting. But I think everyone's seeing that there's a bit of money to be made. And so they're all having a crack at making stuff. But yeah, some of the traditional SEO tools like RFs and Moz and stuff, they all have their own tools. Otterly, there's Peak, which I really like. There's so many AI SEO, like there's hundreds. But I think the key is thinking about, again, what are your business objectives and making sure that you are tracking against them and showing that return on investment, because it is really important. There's lots of other things that you can do around like sentiment analysis as well, putting data into some of the tools like Gemini, Google LM. There's so many. But yeah, the key is to explore, work out what the objectives are, and then how you can show the value of what you're doing, and be really clear on what the starting point is. Like, don't just put it all together. You need to have a start and an end point. Like, what is it? And then be checking it on a regular basis. Is it every 30 days, every 60 days, 90 days? Are those sources that you secured media coverage in, for example, are they still really valuable 30 days later, or is it swapping in new publications? How does that all work? What does that look like, and how could that inform your next move or opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mercedes, coming to you here in a second, but every experiment, we all learned this in school, right? Starts with a hypothesis or an assumption that you have to test again. So I love that point that you make, is don't forget the starting point and get that get that nicely articulated for your organization. Mercedes, what about you? Tips to track LLM impact, success, visibility?
Yes, as Celia said, there's so many. The range is very wide in terms of how much they cost as well. So
yeah, it's very important.
Profound is quite pricey, but then you have Scrunch, you have Peak, like you mentioned as well. There's one called Tracker, but it's spelled with 2 Ks. And that one can be that one is I think there's a free version even, but as Celia said, you need to make sure that it matches with your objectives, and that it does. Like, one thing is having tracking global visibility versus tracking visibility, for example, for this market. So you need to be aware, like, are they using local servers and things like that, so that you tap on that market and not visibility across the whole globe. So yeah, there's definitely a lot out there. We also do a little bit ourselves. Like, you can track it yourself with your own. If you're keen to understand how your brand is tracking on ChatGPT, you can do it yourself. You can just prompt ChatGPT, and with some of those prompts, and then have an idea. But things will vary according to different large language models, and it also depends on your budget. What do you want to do?
Great tips, thank you. Hopefully everyone got a note of all those tracking tools that Celia and Mercedes mentioned. If not, you will get access to this recording afterwards, so you can come to this moment and to that. Mercedes, coming to you, because there's a couple of questions as well about which AI tools has Medianet adapted into its workflows. But perhaps could you share with the audience some of the work Medianet's doing with its strategies to help clients earn visibility and trust, in this rise of the LLM technology?
Yeah, so Medianet adopted AI a while ago. It's been already a few years that we have adopted AI, but now more specifically to help clients in their day-to-day work. There's a few features that we're about to release. One of them is generating headlines and key points from the content of a press release. So you will be able to very easily generate a suggested headline and also summarize and put it together in bullet points. And those key points will be moving to the top of the release rather than the bottom, which is where they are now, because that helps with optimization as well for LLMs, feeding the LLMs that information very quickly. So that's coming up. Another feature that is coming up is based on the content of a media release again, being able to request the platform to generate a list of relevant contacts. So matching the content with contacts that talk about those topics in your release. So that will save you a lot of time as well, and it will also allow you to discover contacts that maybe you hadn't thought about when you were building your list on the database. There's another one too that is very, very exciting personally. So beyond knowing whether you're being cited or not, we are working on a framework to understand how an LLM talks about you, what narratives are coming through on a certain brand or a topic. So that is a market first, kind of applying media analysis rigor to LLM analysis in a way. And we have a team of really experienced and award-winning media analysts in the business, and they are working on that framework. So that's going to be coming up. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Great to share that. Celia, there's a few questions coming through that are mentioning things around trust and authority, right? And it kind of relates to another question I had wanted to ask you, and that was around the risks potentially if we, media comms professionals, corporate affairs teams, if we pivot too hard and we focus too much on optimizing for LLMs, that we perhaps neglect some of the human relationships, the trusted, authoritative human relationships that still drive earned media. So what advice would you give to PR and comms teams to balance, those really long-standing media relationships, trusted, media relationships with AI-driven optimization?
Yeah, look, I think you need to treat large language models ultimately as another stakeholder rather than, just going all in on that. The report as well that we produced shows that it's not only what you're doing online, it's offline that counts. So it's, speaking opportunities, it's podcasting, it's all of those things that are really important. And I think, going back to the media contact side of things, it's going to get harder. It's already hard enough to pitch stories, but I think once people realise that this is a way for them to increase their visibility and within these large language models, these journalist inboxes are going to get even more oversubscribed and with questionable quality of pitches. So I do, as much as I have been a bit anti relationships with journalists in the past, because I think, if you've got an editor and they're your mate, that's great, but they need to write interesting stories. So, but now I do think that relationships are going to be as important as the story, because for you to stand out in those inboxes and for people to actually listen to what you've got to say.
Yeah, great. Mercedes, you got anything to add to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we still need to nurture those relationships. That's just good PR in my view. And you need those relationships so that you get the coverage that then will feed these LLMs. So if you think of an LLM as another media channel or another, communication channel, it has its own intricacies and rules and nuances, just like you would think of a journalist. A journalist has their own topics of interest and things like that. So I think you just need to think about it as another media and another communication channel. But yeah, absolutely. You just need to look at the format and the structure of your content and what type of content fits LLMs or what those LLMs prioritize in terms of what they look for.
Yeah, fantastic. Another audience question that I'd like to go to now. Celia, you mentioned a little bit earlier, a few minutes ago, all the different sources. You're talking about editorial and this and this. You didn't mention social. And one of our audiences has obviously picked up on that, and I think it's asked a very valid question. And do posts to social now become less relevant in curating responses?
Yeah,
for LLM. Yeah.
So interesting question, and we actually explored this as part of the report. The report is separated into two sections. We looked at corporate brand versus personal brand. For corporate brand, socials didn't really play a role, but this data was taken back in March, as we said before. And since then, Instagram has announced that they are opening up their feeds to Google indexing. So that might shape things a little bit further. But at the time of when we did the research, social had very little impact at all on large language models for the corporate side. But on personal brand, it was slightly different. It contributed to about 18-19% of influence. So particularly like LinkedIn was a strong source. So yeah, something to consider there. And the brands that we were looking at, we looked at Australia's fastest growing companies and unicorns. So they were mainly in the kind of tech space. So there might be some slightly different nuances depending on the industry vertical that you're working on, but that's what we've seen.
Yeah, great share. Thank you. Another audience question about editorial content versus paid content, and
Yes.
how do these models prioritize one over the other?
So at the moment, so if you were looking at like
anything you can share.
Yeah, so with the affiliate content, they can't differentiate between a paid or native piece of advertorial versus traditional editorial. They can if you ask them to, and that's part of the prompt, but they're not looking for that when they're doing a generic response. So that is a way to shortcut exposure and shortcut results, I believe. How long it will stay like that, I'm not sure, because as we keep saying, like, everything's evolving. But at the moment, that does seem like a good way to make some progress.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you. Speaking of progress, Mercedes, what is one or two bits of practical advice you can offer to your fellow kind of comms and PR professionals who are perhaps not as far along as you and your team are? They're just maybe at the beginning stages of integrating AI into their workflows, or at the beginning of wanting to experiment in this LLM visibility piece. Just one or two tips from you.
Well, I think, as I said before, you just need to start playing around with the tools, I would say. Invest a little bit of budget into some of these tools and start experimenting. I also follow a lot of people on LinkedIn that are very good, like Celia, that are great at sharing really good content, and I learn a lot from there. Yeah, definitely start following some people that, are very knowledgeable and influencing the space. I would say, start with one problem to solve, maybe. If you have one thing that you can automate, something that you do all the time and it's repeatable, start looking for something that one little problem to solve, and that's your starting point. That would be my one or two practical pieces of advice.
Yeah, fantastic. And Celia, what do you think? You've been so ahead of the game on this. What do you think are going to be for us in the PR and comms world over the next couple of years? Are we going to need to become prompt engineers?
No, you definitely don't. There's an amazing tool called Prompt Cowboy. So check that out. It will really lift your prompt game. You just put in a simple prompt and it will give you something amazing to work with. And yeah, it'll really help you on your AI journey.
Thank you.
But yeah, in terms of skills, look, I think storytelling's going to be more important than ever. I think you're going to need some analytical skills to work out, reverse engineer why brands are showing up where they do and how you can get a piece of the action. But I do think, looking ahead, that in real life experiences are going to be really important, as people are going to want to come together. This experiential, I think, will be really big again for brands, as people kind of look to find some real life fun. So yeah, the future's bright. PR is going to have the biggest 10 years ahead, and the sooner that brands wise up to this, the better for all of us. But it's our job to take them on this journey and explain to them how important it is, and also to educate ourselves on what's happening and keep up with everything. It does seem like it's at breakneck speed, and it really is. Yeah. But the more time that you can invest in playing and learning, the more that's going to pay dividends to you.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that positivity, and thank you for that. Because Mercedes, I was going to ask you that there is, a school of commentary out there that says that marketers and PRs should be perhaps cautious, scared, watchful of AI, because it could fundamentally change traditional digital marketing activities and advertising, and then the way that those activities are measured. What do you think? Do you take the more positive, let's get on the train approach, Celia, or do you think that there's a degree of caution to be had as well?
Oh, I'm definitely on the positive train. So I'm naturally a curious person. So when all this started to happen, I was right there. I think marketers by nature can be very adaptable. Like we are adaptable because we need to adapt to different products and talk in different brand tones, and so we are by nature quite adaptable, and we have seen a fair share of changes, with SEO and social media and influenza and all of that stuff. So I think we just have to adapt again. I think if anyone should be scared is of not upskilling and not getting on the positive. So it's happening now. It's having a huge impact. So you just need to start learning, get curious, and don't. I think the way to overcome fear is by fulfilling your curiosity.
Love it. Thank you. We are coming very close to the end of our time, ladies, and I have asked you a lot of the questions that I have been seeing pop up on the questions panel here, which are very similar to the ones I'd hoped to ask you. So it's great to see that I've got the same degree of curiosity on your knowledge as our audience has. So just before we kind of wrap up and share a few bits and pieces about how to access your amazing report, Celia, if I could ask you both to give just one piece of advice to a PR leader about prepping for just the next 6 months of AI impact, what would it be? I mean, you've already shared so many great tips, but if I said just one, what's your top tip? Mercedes, we're going to start with you, and Celia will close with you.
It's hard to pick one, but I would say, I think we need to sharpen our critical skills, because as content becomes so easily made, and distributing fake content, deep fakes, all that stuff that is going to come up. I think we just need to keep an eye on what we are about and keep our we keep true to ourselves and very much maintain our critical skills, so that critical thinking skills, so that we can differentiate what's true from what's not, and also to stay true to ourselves as well and our brands. So if I keep it short, that would be it. Yeah.
Thank you. Celia, your top tip for the next 6 months?
Yeah, so I would say, look, if you're not already asking these machines what they think about you or the brand, then that's a real natural first starting point. Try a few different prompts, see what it's churning out, ask it why. And then secondly, I would just say set up analytics in the back end of Google Analytics. You can separate the traffic from large language models versus like organic and paid search. And I think that's really good to be able to show if you've got, people that are finding you already. I think a lot of brands will have already picked up on people say, oh, I found you via ChatGPT, but this will actually give you the numbers to prove it. And if you're not getting any traffic there, the chances are that you're not showing up in those responses anyway. And so you probably need to do some work. So yeah, they're my 2 top tips.
Thank you.
As a starting point.
Yeah. Excellent. Look, really appreciate the knowledge share and the guidance from both of you. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who has watched this live or the recording, and for the questions. I know there were a couple I couldn't get to in the interest of time, but thank you for your engagement. A couple of key takeaways from this discussion are now going to be up on screen. And I mentioned at the start that PR rising and AI is very close to our hearts at Medianet, and for me as a leader in the organisation. And there are a number of ways we can assist you with that. Our AI press release headline and summarization functionality, our soon-to-be launched LLM-generated media distribution lists that will recommend media contacts based on the content of your PR, editorial review sessions where our editor can work one-on-one with your teams to deep dive into how to optimize your press release for LLM visibility, and our new proprietary impact score, which is launching next week as part of our media monitoring service, which is going to help you really measure the credibility and accurately give you an indication of the impact of your PR efforts. Replacing a lot of those inflated reach and advertising value kind of metrics. And you've heard both Celia and Mercedes just mention the importance of measurement in this space as well. Look, so please do connect with me, Mercedes, and Celia in follow-up. We would love to hear from you on this topic. I strongly, strongly recommend you download LEOPRD's Reputation to Revenue Report, and the QR code is on the screen now. We will also send you this QR code in follow-up, as well as a couple of other resources from Medianet to assist you on your AI journey. So thank you again, Celia and Mercedes, for your participation, all your great knowledge share. And thank you to everyone who watched this live or on demand. And I look forward to seeing you at the next Medianet event. Thank you.